as an opportunity to put to rest that which has been recurrent, because the issue of strikes has, I mean, almost every year you're going to get a doctor strike, then you're going to have the usual going to the labor court, serving papers in the middle of the night, jailing, contempt of court. I mean, almost every year you expect that kind of a circus. And I believe that it is in the interest of this administration to be able to solve the same. But contextualizing that and pitting it against the shame of globe-trotting county officials, it tells you that as a country, sometimes we have our priorities upside down. Because remember, this shame of globe-trotting, they are globe-trotting on taxpayers' money. Mm-hmm. They are not removing money from their pocket. So when MCAs go for benchmarking to Singapore, for instance, they are not the per diems they are paid, they are not paid using their own money. It is the taxpayers' money. So when you see again the Council of Governors pushing for more money to be allocated to the counties, and then you see the Controller of Budget and you see the Auditor General's report of how that money is spent, then it tells you we also have another crisis in this country where public officials see public money as private expense. Everywhere where they see a wand of cash, they want to dip in the till and grab as much as you can before you leave office. And therefore, because health is a devolved function, you would expect that some of this globe-trotting money would actually go into health. But what we have as a country, we have right now a private association of hospitals saying they will not be accepting NHIF anymore. And that is against a backdrop of every year or once in a while, you will hear there is money that has been lost in NHIF through collusion again with the same hospitals that are denying service. I think we have an ethics, we have a culture problem as a country. And sometimes I say, Fred, if we are 10 thieves and an election is called, okay, unless one of the thieves transforms to become a priest, we are likely to elect one of the thieves. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes it is true, there's a bigger pool of good Kenyans who can take the mantle of leadership, but it would appear those we call good Kenyans have left politics to be done by other people. Are you saying that more taxation will not necessarily mean a better life for Kenyans? Because that's what we're staring at. At the end of this month, the deduction on I am a salaried employee. I'm at least 4%, almost 4% of my salary will be going to the state coffers. Are you saying that the expectation should not be that I will have a better life? The principle of taxation is quid pro quo, something for something. Mm-hmm. There is an expectation that when I give the state something, in return I expect services. But what does the law say, Fred? The law is very clear. Once tax is collected, it goes into the consolidated fund. What is the charge on the consolidated fund? The first charge is external debt. Even before anyone is paid is external debt. The second one is domestic debt. So the banks, they have been lending, including even individuals. So that is the second charge. By the time you get to salaries and you get to development, what is left for development is very little. So the public officials that we elect participate in mismanaging, including the debt that we borrow. Therefore, when tax is collected from you, that tax is supposed to do what it's supposed to do, but it doesn't. Why? It was misappropriated in the first instance, and it has to be repaid. So I think, yes, there is an expectation that when you're taxed, that tax, and that is what the High Court said when it stopped the finance sections of the Finance Act, especially on this housing, because they say there is no proper legal framework on this money that you collect on exactly how you're supposed to spend it. Mm-hmm. And the government was
the money is collected for affordable housing may not necessarily...
yes, go to affordable housing. It might as well find its way to an MCA's pocket, hiring all the way to Dubai to go to a holiday. So I think it's not all lost, because sometimes it is easy to feel overwhelmed by the fact that you receive negative news from all quarters. The reality is, even having a headline where we expose and say, where the media plays a role and says, look, the money that was taxed in Mama Mboga, pale kwa kiosk, Kanjo come to collect your money. that money went to an MCA's pocket to go and play golf in Dubai. You know, that is something in itself, because initially the money would get lost. You remember when we had Kajuras, and those, what were they called before MCAs?
Local governments.
Kajura, and I know it in Kikuyu, they were called Kajura. You know, no one used to...
It was just councillors.
Councillors, yes.
Yeah.
You know, no one used to know where they used to take their money. It is that time where they would just identify a piece of land, which is a school, and they grab. Right now, it's a bit difficult to do some of those things.
No.
So yes, we still have challenges, I agree. But I think moving forward, it's important that we learn as a country. Yes, this is a challenge, but once we solve that one, we don't need to come back to that again.
And Eric has pointed out the kind of challenges the government has: corruption, wanton corruption, mismanagement of public resources, and all this. But we have seen, Gabriela, over the years that institutions that could put government to account on such matters are no longer as powerful. The church, for example. The civil society is not as vocal. Now we're seeing the opposition is seriously weakened, or at least they're now struggling to fill the gap left by Raila Odinga. That could take a while, meaning they may not really play their role properly. With the absence of parliament being able to properly carry out its role, are we saying we're leaving it just to the media? Or is Wanjiku, the Wanjiku we talk about, able to actually stand for themselves and raise questions?
I think the Wanjiku have started standing for themselves. You have seen what happened in Kericho and Bomet. It speaks a lot about what the people at the ground are saying. When you elect people and they fail to represent you, it means you stand up to represent yourself. Ruto might have his way in dictating things and making it work on how we want it. But the people will deal with him. Because first, you see, most of Kenya Kwanza MPs and parliamentarians and senators, they might not come back. Ruto might come back, he might fight for himself and come back, but most of his allies will not come back. Okay. Why? Because even when you say the opposition have been weakened, the opposition, they have not been weakened. You have seen Sifuna the way he's speaking.
They could be otherwise preoccupied, not necessarily weakened. Preoccupied with succession politics.
Just the tyranny of number, but weakening the opposition might be very hard. Apart from, you see, Joe fighting with Oparanya, that does not mean opposition is weakened. Baba is still there. Addis Ababa is just here. He will be here to represent us. And for now, I think he's not that preoccupied.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you come back to this conversation about the common mwananchi standing up and speaking out for themselves, or trying, without necessarily using those channels that we've so often been using, the church, civil societies, university student leadership and the like, the Mwananchi has already had this opportunity, even through provisions of the Constitution, to recall a member of parliament when they see that he's not performing. With a general agreement that this parliament has misbehaved, how come we're not seeing anyone trying to invoke that provision of the law? Is this the same population that we expect will come out and stand for themselves? How will they do that if even through channels that are provided for them, they're still not doing it?
You see, the challenge with the recall clause is that there are times up to when you can be able to revoke that clause. And we have made it very difficult for the citizens to even invoke that particular recall clause. And it is because, for instance, the Constitution in the recall clause says that you cannot recall an elected official before it is 2 years into an election. So it is too early right now to even begin to think about it. Number two, when you are organizing yourself to recall a member, we have made it so expensive for any recaller to even begin to think about it. Because one, for instance, you have to look for signatures of half of the people who voted in that election that voted for the person that you want to recall. And the manner in which we have seen access to justice, particularly costing justice, in the sense that the amount of monies that you need to prepare your petition for recall is also very expensive. And that is based on how we have made elections to look like, very expensive again, mobilizing people around a recall, because the manner in which we do our elections in this country is also largely boxed. So boxed means that is either ethnicized or we look at people from certain lenses. So when Kevin Osido wants to, for instance, recall Gachagua, the people who come from Gashagua's area who probably voted for that election might begin to say you are targeting our own. So definitely they will not be excited about my recall. So we have made this recall clause of the Constitution quite difficult. No wonder it has not been tested by anyone since we promulgated the Constitution. And that is purely because it is not tenable. But we now need to think through how we can be able to make citizens have the power to recall their leaders, because it's a constitutional provision that has been made to look very difficult and hard. But given the kind of moment that we have, which might probably be the aha moment for us to even review the Constitution, talking about the National Dialogue Committee report, the NADCO report, the provisions around constitutional amendments that probably would be coming up, possibilities of referendum. We also need to look at what are some of these aspects of the Constitution that then would be able to empower the citizens. Look at, for instance, this way, that the Senate has even the power also to impeach a president. Why are we not having senators talking about possibilities of impeaching President William Ruto?
Yeah, I think we're in agreement about how the 13th Parliament in general is performing.
But you see, Fred, there is no harm in submitting an impeachment motion and just say, as senator for Siaya County, I am organizing this impeachment clause. Then we test it and see whether really Kenya Kwanza, even one MP will vote for an impeachment process for the president. So those are just some of the issues and opportunities that could exist, but still very far-flung from giving power to the citizens. But interestingly, at the county levels, we see a difference. Because at that level, citizens have organized themselves in networks and organized groups that are questioning decisions by their county governments. And we have seen very successful reviews being done even on the budget issues, priorities of programs and projects by county governments in the county integrated development planning. Maybe that kind of energy needs to be reorganized to look at the national level. But you see, national deals with a number of national issues, and those are also based on priorities. Only that the character, the attitude, and the tenets around who President William Ruto is. And that's why I was saying, who is William outside the presidency? Okay. What kind of personality does he portray? Is he willing to listen, assuming he was a common mwananchi from Uasin Gishu? What kind of president would he want to have as a Kenyan?
The belief was that with the promulgation of the Constitution in 2010, that would remedy this, that it didn't matter who becomes the president or their character, that the institutions would be in place. We are seeing for the first time, despite the new Constitution, these institutions are not as strong enough. They've not been able to stand their ground and perform their duty. That's why we're going back to the Mwananchi, because they say power belongs to the people. But it would appear that even the Mwananchi is either not aware of channels that they can use to oversight the government directly, or they're reluctant. That's why we are seeing incidences like that, which we saw in Bomet and Kericho and other areas, going to the streets, heckling and that. Is it due to a lack of knowledge of channels of addressing the issues that we face?
First, I agree with you that Article 1 of the Constitution vests power. You know, power belongs to the people, and they can choose to exercise directly or they can delegate. And most of what we see and most of what comes to the fore is the delegated bit, whether through the judiciary or the National Assembly or through Senate, or whichever other areas that Kenyans may wish to so delegate, including commissions. But this is to say that, one, it is very difficult to recall a member of parliament, even when it is clear that they might not be performing. But again, the question would be, what is performance? You know, when you ask Wanjiko, is your MP performing? How does Wanjiko measure the parameters within which a member of parliament performs? Because I can tell you there are members of parliament who've never said a word on the floor of the house. And yet, actually, that is their work. But the same member of parliament that doesn't say anything in the House is very effective when it comes to deployment of CDF, which in actual sense is not their mandate. So also Wanjiko, I think there is need for civic education, for Wanjiko to understand what exactly are the roles of different people. But not all is lost. Remember, most of the cases that go to the judiciary are either from lobby groups or from ordinary Kenyans. You saw the other day there was a petition to remove the Chief Justice from an ordinary Kenyan. And so it is not, we are opening up the democratic space to an extent that, yes, a majority, there are Kenyans who may not understand what to do, but we have a growing population that understands exactly within which space to play in. And these are the people, you know, sometimes these MPs, when you vote them or the governors, you will not see them on the ground. And you know, sometimes when they come to you, when there is a public rally, the Wanjiko gets an opportunity to exercise their decibels. So depending, you could be popular and Wanjiko could clap for you, or you could be unpopular and they could heckle you. But you know, sometimes we need to take that with a pinch of salt. During last campaigns, one of the people that was heckled a lot, in fact, I never thought they would find their way back to being a governor, was I think the Nandi, the young man governor. Is he Nandi governor?
Stephen Sang.
Sorry?
Stephen Sang.
Yes, Stephen Sang. You know, His Excellency was heckled everywhere he used to go with the deputy president. He used to be heckled. But look, he's the governor. So the question then becomes, who voted for him? Because from the clips, you can see people don't want him. But on the ballot, so we also need to exercise some level of discretion in finding out these people that are heckling, why are they heckling in the first place? Is it induced? Is it induced heckling? Because you see also, heckling can be induced. Depending on the manner you induce, you can get the correct amount of decibel for you. So I think, yes, there is the political space. But in terms of governance, it is not all lost. We have Kenyans that are able to litigate on behalf of other Kenyans. Remember, even for this housing bill to get where it has gotten, it has been dragged through the mud. I told you it started with, and you know, people don't know, these housing things started with, I think, session of paper number 10, during Kibaki's time. Kibaki was unable to bring it to fruition. Uhuru took over. Kenyans took him through the court processes, right, left, and center. He abandoned, he went to do other things. Now, William has come to the fore. He's the one exercising the powers that have been given to him. And so far, we can say he has succeeded. and you know, nothing stops another Kenyan, once it is assented today, from going to court tomorrow and declaring it unconstitutional. As to whether that will happen or not, the jury is still out there. But the truth is, it's not all lost. In terms of vigilance, the reality is that Kenyans are vigilant. Right now, it's not possible to get away with some things that politicians would get away with some time back. Right now, there are things you'll do, Fred, and people will call you out. Even media stations now.
Is it enough to call out politicians? Because that's a concern. There's a lot of banter online. People expressing themselves on Twitter and X and saying this and the other. But that kind of agitation really results in any tangible change.
No, but venting is okay. You know, expressing your constitutional right even to vent is okay. Because remember, if there is no platform for people to vent, you're fomenting chaos. Because then people might you know, demonstrate in other ways. So even social media, you recall, it's not by the way in vain. You recall Kenyans vented on the former president. He ran away from Twitter and Facebook. It's just when he retired that he opened up social media pages. So it's not all lost and it's not in vain.
But as a youth leader, if you look back at the late 80s and in the 90s, the student movement was very strong and they fought for their own rights. Right now, matters education, even university, funding for university that we mentioned earlier. There's still delays in disbursement of funds for tuition fees in universities. Yet the student population is totally quiet. Now, that's the kind of concern we have. It would appear the general populace has gotten to a point either of weakness or hopelessness by realizing that they have no proper channel to vent or express themselves. Do you think that is a problem we're facing now?
You know, the problem of Kenya is that election is based on parties, not individuals. When they're electing parties, either ODM or UDA, they are just electing parties. But when you see universities, it was stronger back then compared to now. Why? Because first, you see these big people, they are, when you speak a lot, you are being silenced by either money or unafinyo kidogo. So it's hard to find students coming out strongly to speak about their rights. Because when you see, when the Mbakati MP was, Babu was the president of Nairobi University, he was very strong because he himself had money, he had his own
Goons.
Okay,
Followers.
Never wanted that word goon. He had his own people, I can say people. So it's hard to finger that kind of a person. But you see this small student who doesn't have any money.
And they've generally been silenced in the whole country,
when
that
you
there's
are
no
well
strong
packaged,
student movement.
when your pocket is well packaged, you have that confidence of doing anything. But you yourself, you lack even money to take care of your basic needs. What will you speak?
Okay. But do you agree with that assessment that because there's general silence even from the university student community,
Yeah.
even just calling a press conference to say that we have an issue?
Fred, it's a very important issue that you're raising. And as Kenyans, we really need to begin to ask ourselves, where are we headed to? A good leader to our people is as good as the people you represent and the people who give you that power. Now, those years that you're mentioning, if you were to go back those many years, the student leaders of then are our leaders now. Say our governor, the Speaker, National Assembly, Speaker, Senate, our president, and we can go on and on and on and on. The challenge that we have that I believe we are facing is, what is the agenda? And if it is an agenda that will be able to rally people around that commonality to agree on how we want to get to that agenda, I believe that many Kenyans will be able to run on it. The challenge is that we have failed to identify that agenda. Because even these issues that we are discussing here are still being stratified as either Azimio issues.
Even student challenges,
Yes.
they're not able to identify their own agenda.
Even student leaders, not necessarily students from institutions of learning, because we engage with them through a peace and security program on prevention of violent extremism. And you put them, 3,000 of them in a hall, even to agree on a chair, that we want to take you to group work, as many as you are, decide on how you will go into groups. Everybody wants to be a chairman of a small group to just agree on a small group work document, you know. And that is where the problem begins. Remember, there is a time a research was done by one of these premier universities, and they asked young people, what would they do to be able to get to where they want? And they said they have no problem being corrupted. And that is how you see the transition from universities into life. And that is why most of the student leaders, as she is saying, want to be politicians. Wow. The kind of picture that we have painted as a politician of Kenya is not that very ideology-oriented citizen. Is not that person who wants to drive people to a common change, that common agenda. He's someone who wants to engage in wash-wash, as former CS Matiang'i told us. He's someone who wants probably to be associated with the drug and dealings and all these things. That is a kind of successful picture that we have painted for many of our young people. And because we are talking about student leaders, that is largely why most of them are blogging for politicians. Because there is easy and quick money. Nobody is standing up there and saying, guys, what are the possible avenues for us to push back on these presidential directives that are not working for us? And the universities is where ideas are built and generated. Our university students, now the student leaders, have failed, even for this generation, to provide those alternatives. That is why, as he said, the president can spend time with the artists, you know, at State House, and we don't see how the opportunities even that social media has now to be as an alternative voice. Before we go to the president, no one there is telling them, you see, Your Excellency the President, X has very many negative comments on some of the things that you are talking about or that you are doing. Okay. How can we be able to use that as a platform now to begin to make the president listen? And as I finish on this,
because we are about to go on a break, it's already 7:30, and we'll come back to continue with this discussion.
Precisely.
Let's take a break right now. You're watching Morning Cafe, and we'll continue discussing possible ways that Kenyans can get involved in this national discussion. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Cafe on TV47 with me, Fred Ndimuli. I'm still in studio with Eric Mungai, Gabriela Lorere, and Kevin Osido, our analysts this morning as we look at the state of the nation. And we're trying to have this, it's a very difficult conversation to have on where we seem to be failing. Institutions appear to be influenced by others. Institutions appear to be failing to do their role, to be playing their role as is expected. And we wonder, we have a very progressive constitution that was supposed to remedy this, even hinder any individual who may have dictatorial tendencies. What is going wrong? What is failing here, Eric?
I don't know how to answer that question without looking like I am a staunch supporter of the government. And I'm not saying I'm not.
It's okay. We need that perspective as well. We need that perspective as well.
And there's also no problem in being a staunch supporter.
But sometimes I feel like what this presidency, the presidency of William Ruto and Gachagua have done, they have first understood the systems. They have, it's like when the constitution, even when the president was in the side of no, he was still studying this constitution and he got to understand it very well. You know, even the ones who are supporting it, I do not think they understand it as much as William understands it. And why is that? Because when you look at a process, especially like when you take a bill, isolate a bill, like say SHIF or the housing bill, when you look at the process, like SHIF took, I think, less than 10 days or less than 15 days to pass through the Senate. When you look at those bills and the way they were passed, and then you look at the fact that they were subjected to a court process, and yet even through the court process, he was scathed, but by and large he came out unscathed, and now he's implementing it tells you that this is a man who has studied this document and understands how to implement it, despite or in spite of the hurdles that legally might be placed before him. And remember, sometimes leadership calls for wisdom, because we were just discussing and saying the things that he is doing now, his predecessor was by and large unable to do some of them as a result of the same checks and balances
Yet
of the same
he still enjoyed a majority
of the same constitution, and yet he enjoyed a majority in parliament. So I think we must give it first to the man. He understands his stuff. He understands, most importantly, the people he's dealing with at the National Assembly and at the Senate. You recall, was it the housing bill that Azimio members left? There was a certain bill that was supposed to be voted for, and instead of the Azimio members staying in parliament to vote no, the finance bill, they decided to walk out. But when you look at the reasons why they decided to walk out and not antagonize and not vote in the House, you realize all along Baba was coming with the AUC thing. So instead of antagonizing the sitting government, you're better off boycotting from voting and walking out, because then, you know, a person will not say that you are against what the government was trying to do. So I think the man has understood how parliament works. He has understood how the court system works. He has also understood how to work with the executive. I can tell you right now, one of the most difficult things you can do as an executive is to work for this government, because you don't even have time for yourself. The man knows your ministry more than you know it. So you're always playing catch up. You have to do more than is also expected of you. So these are very difficult. If you're given a job in this government, chances are high you're most likely going to resign before the end of the term because of the pressure that befalls you. So we must say that yes, it's a good constitution. But if you get leaders who are likely to abuse it, the same constitution might lead us to have dire consequences. But if you get good leadership that wants to transform this country, then it's a very good document for us to work with and for us to implement policies that might benefit this country for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Lorere, on this issue of the Constitution, do you think that probably the issues we are facing right now are directly as a result of having a new Constitution? We expected this document would remedy a lot of these issues, so we just sit back and expect the Constitution will work for itself and ensure that everything is smooth. Do you think that kind of lethargy is coming from that direction, that the Constitution itself has forced us to be lazy?
You know, the Constitution has not forced us to be lazy. When you fail to adhere to that Constitution, what do you expect? Ruto, William Ruto, has managed to weaken every institution. So the people who are supposed to defend that Constitution are the one failing to defend that Constitution. No, it's not a matter of Constitution is making us lazy. No, we don't have the right people who are supposed to defend that Constitution at the right place. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yesterday on the front pages of the dailies, they spoke about, it was an anniversary, 15th anniversary of the death of Oscar Oulu and Paul King'ara. You remember those days when civil society was really strong. And one would expect that those institutions would still be as strong today. The church as well. We've just been talking about student leadership. The youth setting the agenda and transitioning into leadership. Now we're seeing that no youth is coming up, or at least they're not using that route towards leadership. When all these different institutions fail, should we blame it on the Constitution? That this Constitution came up to remedy a lot of things, hence rendered many of these institutions probably
moribund or useless.
Moribund, yes. Like that,
I believe that the Constitution instead grants more power to the institutions. The challenge that probably is inherent is the implementation of the Constitution. So that if you do the audit of the benefits that we have made since 2010, I believe that those benefits are very many. For instance, vetting of cabinet secretaries on public glare. That's quite a huge plus. Devolution and just the possibility of bringing in a lot of money, resources, and even power to the people at that grassroots level. The opportunity that citizens have for public participation, like now we've just been talking about housing levy and the housing scheme and the legal battles that it has had to go through, courtesy of the power of the Constitution. But the challenge is in how we use the Constitution, the power that the Constitution gives us, to now give power to the institutions. For instance, judiciary. The CJ has to make a call to the president to be given power that the Constitution actually gives to the Supreme Court. Why should that happen? And the president tells us that, yeah, we have talked with the judiciary, sasa maneno itakuwa mzuri. I don't think that we are implementing the Constitution, therefore, in a proper manner. So implementing the Constitution in a proper manner means that when, for instance, we are disbursing or appropriating resources to institutions of governance like the judiciary, it should be a definite thing. There should be no conversations between the president, the National Assembly Speaker, and the judiciary or the Supreme Court president. It should be an automatic measure. Sending monies to counties, there should be no conversation around who we need to call to the table, how we need to discuss this. We have a formula, we have an institution called the Commission on Revenue Allocation, and the Senate having the discussions to give us a formula, use the formula to send monies. But the challenge is in how we are implementing it, which is why for me, I will keep going back to the character, the attitude, and the posture, the personality of the leader. If it is a leader that is interested in empowering institutions, also give that power to the citizen, the institution of the citizenry. And you see, Kenyans have been tried and tested many times. For instance, we have been sold nasty sugar, we have bought it and consumed it. We've been given rotten unga, we have bought it, consumed it. We have been told fuel has gone so much high up. People have been called to even stop their vehicles on the roads. No one even wants to try that. You know, we have had demonstrations until Baba is seemingly getting tired. Like he's saying, let me go and rest a little bit, and we see whether Kenyans can actually reorganize themselves. The Constitution, in my view, is not the mess. The issue is how do we grasp that power from the Constitution and have, for example, with due respect to the Senator of Busia, have as many Okia Omtatas and the many amicus petitioners that we see conjoining and enjoining together with him to ask us many difficult questions. Probably information or lack of how to engage. And last evening, I was gracious to be invited by one of these local radio stations, and the question we were discussing was, how do citizens write memoranda documents? How do you engage with a county government? How do you engage with a national government ministry? How do you petition? What is this? And how do you get feedback? And actually have a government letterhead posted to you or an email from a cabinet secretary. Probably we need to ask ourselves, therefore, how do we begin to get Kenyans to gain that power and even review issues like the recall we were saying earlier on? Because to the level where we are saying MPs don't have time even to discuss proper laws within the National Assembly, but they have time to go and bring down a very good mind in a vetting process, somebody that Kenyans believe can bring a lot of change when he or she is given an opportunity to lead. And just because they think the gentleman or the lady is much more intelligent than they all are, the 360 of them, the 359 of them probably, they just shoot down that individual. We need to begin to ask ourselves, are there mechanisms through which Kenyans can even recall back that person to be revetted and even have public memoranda being sent to support individuals who are leadership-oriented, people who are innovative, people who are creative, and therefore begin to create alternative good examples that might probably encourage our young people, particularly the university students, to begin to have mentors outside politicians. Because as it is right now, the politician has been made to be much more successful a leader, yet we know from the kind of experiences we have as Kenyans that they might not be the right people that we are looking at. So I think for me, we need to re-audit the Constitution, look at the gains that we have made, and begin to ask ourselves, how do we gain that power back and give it to the citizens?
And yesterday, Ledama Olekina also told the presidents at tonight's mother burial, that you are the one micromanaging this everything in this country. Allow other institutions to be independent. Okay. People are not thinking on Ruto is the one thinking on behalf of institution instead of allowing institution to think of the...
And Fred, that presents another important issue, the space or opportunity to resign. If a Chief Justice has the opinion, is of the opinion that I'm not giving my best, or the Inspector General of the Police, I've been put here, but the environment is not conducive for me.
Okay.
What should I do to just quit office? And how do you make Kenyans understand reasons as to why you quit before you disappear miraculously?
Because of time, I want us to look at the one more thing, and this is a cartoon on page 17 of the Daily Nation, because it is a conversation that has been going on, especially online, after CS Kindiki said that going forward, those who heckle at presidential meetings will be arrested. And it's part of this conversation we had, because it could be as a result of frustration that Kenyans are finding different ways of expressing themselves. Eric, you said, yes, it could actually be manipulated, that it's not genuine expression.
Induced heckling.
It could be induced heckling. But for a moment, let's look at it from this perspective, that it could be genuine expression of the feelings they have. Now they say, thou shalt not heckle, especially in Kenya Kwanza strongholds. And let's look at it from that premise. Do you think it's the best approach by government to tell people this one is not acceptable?
First, there is something Osido has said before I come to this on protecting the constitution and having as many omtatas as possible. And the amicus, having as many amicus. But sometimes those amicus, instead of being curious, sometimes they arouse a lot of curiosity, because sometimes you imagine they want to sabotage government affairs, and then there is also space for that. So I think also when we speak about institutions, we must also be wary of curious characters that might just want to sabotage a government agenda. But moving into thou shall not heckle, especially in Kenya Kwanza rallies, I think this is overreaching. I keep on saying I voted for this government, I campaigned for it, but sometimes when you see ridiculous things, allow people to express themselves.
Even if it's seduced.
Even if it's, that's where intelligence comes in. Because induction, the process of inducement starts somewhere. And most likely, the intelligence is aware of who is doing the inducing. So I think at that point is where it should be forestalled. But I think the business of saying the 11th commandment of thou shalt not heckle, I think that has been passed by time. Yes, you can reprimand the people and tell them to be orderly. There is a place for that. And you have seen His Excellency, the Deputy President, has done that many times. In Bomet, he's done that in Kiambu. He's done that in many places where different politicians carry different people to ululate on their behalf or to heckle others on their behalf. And they have been reprimanded. But I think in terms of legally wanting to stretch government's hand to arrest hecklers, I think it is out of place. The police have much bigger things to do. One, remember we have a big battle of alcoholism that is ongoing, especially in the Mount Kenya region. We can deploy our resources there. Remember in the north eastern places, bandits are wreaking havoc. We need to deploy them there. Deal with the hecklers at intelligence level, not at the point of creating an 11th commandment of thou shalt be arrested if thou heckles a politician. That's the nature of politics. Sometimes people love you, sometimes they don't know what they want with you, sometimes they don't. And that's just the nature of politics.
And the President, Gabriela, has a lot of information, as Eric says. It would appear the President himself has allowed the space around him to be used by other politicians for supremacy battles.
First, Kindiki can say anything, but it's empty word. Why? I'm coming from Samburu County, where banditry is happening on a daily basis. Even yesterday it happened. So tell me, if Kindiki can just say, in 1 week, how many days, I will do this, I will remove this bandit from where? And he comes to the county commissioner only and goes back. He's not even be able to. Kindiki cannot do anything, I tell you.
Okay. So
he's unable even to
it's
deal
an empty
with,
threat.
with empty, totally empty. Take it from me. The other day we were demonstrating in Maralal town over the death of an MTA who was killed by a bandit. And Kindiki, he saw the demonstration, and every leader plus every institution like churches, the people, the Mwananchi went to the street. He came the day after. No one received him apart from county commissioner, because we were waiting for any leader who will receive Kindiki. He will deal with the people of Samburu County. Kindiki cannot do anything. He is incapable of dealing with insecurity. In fact, he should resign that docket.
Okay.
Yeah. Kindiki cannot handle this necklace. He's just talking, but with empty words.
Threats.
Empty, totally empty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bwana Osido.
You know, Fred, before I comment on the cartoon, as a good citizen of the Republic of Kenya and a peace lover, an ardent of security, when I hear a citizen speak like this about security in Kenya, many things come to my mind. And one of those things is the trust deficit that we have in some of our government officers. And I want to appeal to my good friend, Professor Kithure Kindiki, to take very seriously this kind of comments. I am sure that he's listening and his people are listening to us. They'll give him a brief that there is limited confidence in the interventions that the government is putting. Because if she says that she comes from Samburu, and this is on public television, you imagine the number of lives that are in Samburu and are at risk for banditry, attacks. And we have seen the number of times the cabinet secretary has either flown or driven to some of these bandit-stricken areas. So confidence levels, it means, are very limited. I assume or imagine that she's speaking for very many Kenyans, not just from maybe from Samburu and generally. And that is really on the backdrop of our police going to Haiti, being sent there. And you imagine what strategic interests Kenya has in Haiti against local concerns here. So back to, so Professor, take seriously her comments, if possible. Local communities have very good strategic measures of intervention. Engage with them and even call her and ask her, how can we do it better? How can we make this happen for the sake of our country? The cartoon reminds me of the season of the moment, Lent. And this looks like Moses, the good shepherd, carrying this is now the 11th commandment. Of course, there are going to be people who will be supportive to this, and those who will laugh about it like I am laughing about it, because it means nothing. The Constitution in Article 37 gives Kenyans the power and the right to picket, and picketing is not defined how to do it. You can heckle, you can shout, you can scream.
They say peaceably.
Of course, it says it's not telling us to heckle peaceably or unpeaceably. It's just saying, especially in Kenya Kwanza strongholds. It's even strategically demarcating the country.
I think that was an opinion of the
yeah. So this already is supposed to be trashed, and coming from a cabinet secretary, I think he's supposed to be the peace frontline peace ambassador, as number 2 outside the president, who is supposed to be number 1. So the cartoon speaks largely about how the government is thinking, particularly the cabinet secretary. I think his thoughts are outside the context. He needs to reorganize and maybe next time come to speak. And we have advised government severally. Okay. We have told them, like Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga sometimes does these common town hall meetings. Just walk into a town and tell people, I am your cabinet secretary. I want to sit and listen. And that's why at the beginning I said, the president and his people need to listen. Don't have to be the one talking every time and trashing every voice.
Okay.
Walk into a town. When you go to church, sometimes just sit. You don't have to talk and make it look like your State of the Nation address. Just tell people, leo nimekuja tu kuomba Mungu, kuwasikiza, muniongeleshe, and then allow them So you prepare it, because presidential visits are not impromptu. They are organized and planned. Tell people the president will be coming and he has agreed to just listen. Mnaweza chukua makaratasi, muandike namna mnavyofikiria. If it is the county commissioner or his handlers or whoever it is, like now the cabinet secretary, receive those documents. And then when people come, invite them and let them read them for you. And if you need to speak, explain to them government agenda and how that relates to the issues that they are going through. But these kind of shouting and directives that are not relevant, and this kind of roadside declarations, imepitwa na wakati.
It's called Menyonyo in Mount Kenya.
This one
we call it Menyonyo.
Hii ni sauti ya chura ambayo haiwezi zuia ng'ombe kunywa maji.
Before we come to the end of this session, we are to take an update from Voi on that accident involving the Kenyatta University bus. But, okay, I'm told I will get that later on phone with our correspondent from that end. But probably give you an opportunity, about 30 seconds each, to give your final thoughts on everything we've been discussing, even as we prepare for the editorial.
Thank you, our viewers, for having us this morning, and also Fred for being a co-host to us. I want to wish Kenyans a lovely day. And every day is an opportunity for us to make the wrongs right. Every day is an opportunity for us to exercise our constitution and make sure that it lives to the expectations of future generations. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you, Eric. Gabriela?
For the founder of the 11th commandment, Mr. Kindiki, kindly come to Samburu County and work, not just taking photos and a microscope looking at bandits at their cave. No, come and see how people are dying. We are losing people on a daily basis. And for President William Ruto, yesterday you promised our governor in Narok that Murkomen will start fixing the Baragoi Maralal Road. Kindly, if we can start even immediately, as soon as tomorrow, do it, because we are losing a lot of people. People are dying on a daily basis because of bandits, and we know these bandits, it's not about cattle rustling. It is about our land. People from Baringo, they want to take our land forcibly by killing people and scaring people away. Please come as government, come and bring peace to the people of Samburu County. There's no Samburu or Turkana going to Baringo County attacking Baringo County. It's people from Baringo who are always coming to Samburu County, to Turkana County, attacking our people. We are tired of losing life in Samburu County and
Thank you for that.
And Turkana.
Finally, Bonosido.
Fred, when I see these kind of headlines, this really dents my heart about county governments. And I want to appeal to the leadership. Let us prioritize service delivery. Let us also ensure that we have punitive measures for people who go against measures that have been put in place to safeguard resources that have been protected or appropriated for services to be rendered to the people. Counties are there to deliver services, and it is not for individuals and their families to benefit. And I'm very grateful for the kind of message that the Kisii County impeachment process of the Deputy Governor gave to us, rather showed us. You can have as much money as you can imagine, but we must not be people who put money against the interests of the citizens. Your Excellency the President, we want to appeal to you to listen to Kenyans. A number of times issues have come up, Kenyans have talked to you, but you seemingly get tired and you fly out, you rest, and you leave us here dealing with our own personal and sometimes even national issues. We laugh about them sometimes, but truth be told, we need you to listen to Kenyans. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Kevin Osido, Gabriela Lorere, and Eric Mungai, our panelists this morning as we look at the state of the nation. And now I want us to go straight to Voi, where our correspondent currently is, and there's an update on this road accident that took place yesterday involving a Kenyatta University bus, where we do understand quite a number of the students lost their lives. This bus collided with a trailer at Maungu along the Mombasa-Nairobi highway on Monday night. And we do have our correspondent on the spot now joining us on phone. A very good morning to you, Mariki. Bring us up to speed with the events where you are.
Well, a very good, not really a good morning here in Taita Taveta. It's a sad morning. And I am at the Moi County Referral Hospital at the moment, and it's not that good mood here. I can see various people around who are following up on the incident that occurred yesterday at Maungu involving Kenyatta University bus. And already at the moment, Kenyatta University administration is here in Moi, and we are expecting also the governor will be arriving anytime from now. And currently, as OCPD had informed us, Ibrahim Dafala, 11 people are already confirmed dead and 42 are injured. And according to the hospital, they have already been attended to. And arrangements are being made to airlift some of the referred survivors maybe to Nairobi, and we will be following up to see more developments, because we are still waiting here as journalists to be briefed and to be given more information by the administration together with the county CECM for health, Gifton Mkaya, together with the governor and the Kenyatta administration. And it's not that good morning here in Taita Taveta.
You mentioned the fact that there are quite a number of people in hospital.
Yes.
What is the situation there currently in terms of those who have sought treatment after the accident?
Yeah, we have been set aside to wait for the briefing, but those who were injured, we have been told that they have been attended, though we have not seen them eye on eye, but we are hoping that we'll get access once the governor is around, because currently we are being held at the reception here in the Moi County Referral Hospital.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I believe Mariki joining us on phone from Voi with an update on that incident involving Kenyatta University bus, where we do understand 11 students perished after that collision with a trailer at Maungu along the Mombasa Nairobi highway. We'll continue bringing us you updates on that incident as we go along. Now, straight to our editorial comment this morning. The funding crisis in schools nationwide demands urgent attention and resolution. The delayed allocation of government funds threatens to undermine the very foundation of education, putting the future of our students at risk. Reports of schools facing closure before the April 5th, 2024 date due to lack of funds are distressing. It is unacceptable that some institutions may not even be able to conduct essential end-of-term exams, resorting to makeshift solutions like continuous assessment tests. The plight of schools extends beyond academic activities, with reports that some boarding schools are now being forced to ration food for students. What a shame! Yet the allocation for education in the current budget is a staggering 628 billion shillings. Was this just an allocation on paper, with no real intention to adequately ensure schools receive the money? With just 3 months left to the end of the financial year, it means schools may never receive these funds after all. It is also very curious that these delays are also affecting university tuition fees, despite the government rolling out a new financing model. Was there any proper thinking behind this major shift? The situation reeks of high hypocrisy on the part of government in the face of promises made to Kenyan youth. Many questions arise on the government's priorities and whether or not education is receiving the attention it deserves.